Okay. Very good. Thank you, Scott. All right. It appears that it's 5:30 and we have quorum, so I'd like to call to order the Finance Committee meeting of December 13th, 2022. It is 5:32 p.m. First item on the agenda is the approval of minutes, draft minutes of the November 22nd, 2022 Finance Committee meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Discussion. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 I'm going to abstain, just that I wasn't there.
Okay, very good. Ayes have it, motion carries, one abstention. Moving on to item 3, public appearances, non-agenda items. We have no one registered for online or in chambers. All right, thank you, Scott. Moving on to item 4, Finance Director report. I'll turn the floor over to Finance Director Misty Dodge.
Thank you. Obviously, the big news in the Finance Department is tax bills. So tax bills were mailed today, at least as far as I'm aware. So we expect them to hit the mailboxes probably Thursday or by the end of the week. Overall, I kind of think of them as the Fitchburg residents that were always Fitchburg residents, including as of the first of the year, and then kind of the town residents that are now Fitchburg residents. They are 2 separate batches this year because of the unique transition year. So when I look at kind of rates and statistics and all of that stuff, you have to think of them as 2 separate runs because their assessed values are at a different level than what the city ones are, and so the rates work out to be a little bit different. So it's going to look weird this year. Next year, everything will all be combined in the normal way, and it won't be as odd looking. But when you look at kind of the always Fitchburg residents, the average home for city purposes did decrease as we expected it to when we passed the budget. It was a decrease of $75 on that average home, which is about 3%. If you look at the overall tax bill, which includes, the city, the school district, the county, and Madison Tech College, but before special assessments and credits and stuff, but just the total tax bill, for properties or the average home again, the average home that was in the Madison School District had a small decrease, 1.9%. Oregon School District average home is about the same. It's actually a 0% change. And the Verona School District increased 3.1% overall. And so really it's a testament to the school districts ultimately, right, and what referendums have been approved for each one of those districts. On the town side, so those properties that were the town and became Fitchburg, that shook out basically as we expected to as well. So if you recall, the town of Madison decreased their tax levy last year and used fund balance in order to backfill it. So a lot of people last year saw the town portion of their tax bill drop to more or less half, and now we are putting it back up to kind of what I would call the normalized amount. So prior town properties that are now Fitchburg properties are seeing an increase in their average home tax bill, mostly because of that piece of it. We did do 2 separate inserts, both of which are available on our website to try to tailor it a little bit for each one. And then the town insert also included the utility billing changes that they'll be seeing now that they're Fitchburg residents, and also a link to the website that the city has specifically for town stuff. So trying to get a little bit the same information because they need to know how to pay and all of that stuff still, but tweaked it a little bit for their more unique situation. As far as collection, so we have 2 LT hired. They'll start at the end of the week, and we will be collecting over at the counter again. So the last couple of years, because of COVID, we were in that separate conference room. We feel comfortable being back up at that front counter now, which is just easier from a staff perspective, especially when there's lags between customers. So that's tax collection. Audit prelim, our preliminary audit field work was also this last week, which went very well. Final field work will occur in March, and we're on schedule to have Finance Committee presentation the first meeting in June. So hopefully that all continues to progress well. I think that is all I have for now.
Very good. All right. Thank you, Misty. Moving on to item 5A on the agenda, the detailed review of checks for $10,000 and above for the period of November 16th through the 30th, 2022, totaling $445,788.93. And discussion, questions? Hearing none, we will move on to the next item. 5B, which is detailed review of ACH payments for $10,000 and above for the period of November 1st through the 30th, 2022, totaling $738,685.48. Discussion. Hearing none, we will move on to item 5C, detailed review of P-card transactions for $10,000 and above for the cycle ending October 6, 2022. Total dollar, $102,140.78. Discussion. Hearing none, moving on to 5D, detailed review of P-card transactions for $10,000 and above for the cycle ending November 7th, 2022. Total dollar amount, $159,559.58. Discussion. Questions? Hearing none, moving on to 5E, review of P-card transactions for the cycle ending October 6, 2022. Total dollar, $254,278.33. Discussion?
Just a comment.
Yeah.
On page 26 of the packet, just like to compliment you. I think this shows how the attention to detail that is paid to the budget on 9/30/2022 to get that tax refund of obviously item that was paid, but just making sure that everything is, correct. But I just took note of that and just wanted to compliment you on your attention to detail, for something so small that could easily get lost. But
Yeah.
it was good.
All compliments go to Robert in my office, the AP clerk, and then the departments. The departments are very good about watching for that too.
Okay,
So it's
thanks.
been good.
Okay. All right, moving on to the next item. Make sure I pick up on where I left off. 5F, review of P-card transactions for the cycle ending November 7th, 2022. Total dollar, $327,503.50. Discussion. Hearing none. Moving on to item 5G, detailed review of all ACH payments. Payment for the period of November 1st to the 30th, 2022, totaling $747,513.75. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll move on to the last item under 5H. Detailed review of all checks issued, checks 124,200 through 124,269 for the period of November 16th through the 30th, 2022, totaling $531,971.33. Discussion from the committee. Hearing none, that concludes items under item 5. Moving on to action items, which is under number 6. 6A. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-205-22, amending the 2022 General Fund Budget Transit Study?
I move approval.
We have an approval, and we will move it over to Misty, correct? You'll speak to this item?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'll have Gabriella speak to it since she sponsored it.
Oh, okay, very good.
Thanks so much. So I tried to be as detailed in the background as I could be, but basically this is something I wanted to bring back for the budget process, but obviously there was very, very little money to work with in the budget. It's something we talked about during the ARPA period too, but I don't think it was really prioritized during that, considering all the things that we had to fund. So I talked to Misty before, around the budget process, about potentially using staff vacancy funding, given the fact that the transportation engineer position has been vacant for more than 3 months at this point. I thought that there might be some additional funding in the balance of that department in order to use it for the transit study, and she did find money in the budget to do that. So that's what this does. The original amount we talked about was $15,000, and I'll comment on that in a bit. But just going back to what this is going to be an intracity transit feasibility study. It was discussed really extensively in TTC over the last few meetings, and TTC asked that it focus on a few different issues. Number one, and probably the one that had been most discussed, was a senior center shuttle or a shuttle to the civic campus. I know we discussed that through ARPA and at that COW meeting where we talked about transit, and just been kind of a constant discussion throughout 2022. So it would consider that. It would consider what it would take to extend the bus route from Cahill, Maine on Fish Hatchery all the way down to the Civic Campus to kind of connect those bus routes, that gap between the two. And then the third aspect might be considering park and rides and what that would look like. And thought it was kind of representative of what the discussions have been throughout the year. So that's what the transit study would cover. Bill Balke is actually going to try to work on an RFP, so potentially that could be done next year, assuming it passes council. And then I guess at that TTC meeting last week, it was the first chance we had to really discuss it with Bill Balke in depth. He indicated that 15,000 was probably not sufficient to be able to get like a full understanding. It's too bad that I didn't learn that in advance. It's just a lack of, the transmission engineer position's been vacant for so long that we didn't really have a chance to dive into that. So I talked to Misty and Bill about potentially adding some funding if there was any available. It looks like there is $10,000 available that we could also dedicate to it. So I'd like us to consider allocating an additional $10,000 to the study, again, from vacancy funding in the current public works budget. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to update the language. Misty has language up on the screen that clarifies exactly which accounts that additional $10,000 would come from, which would make the total transit feasibility study $25,000.
Go ahead, Misty.
Yeah, so as far as the amendment piece of it, so the language that would need to be changed is obviously the total dollar amount, but then also the specific account numbers that it's coming from. Like Gabriella mentioned, it's still from that same vacancy savings, it's just the different pieces of it. So personnel versus wages versus benefits type things.
So we are approving this resolution along with, it's amending the 2022 general fund budget, but since we are also amending this particular resolution as well to add the additional 10,000.
Correct. So at this point, you have the amendment on the floor to amend the resolution for the higher dollar amount, and then we would vote on the amended resolution if it's approved, to actually approve the transit.
So we're doing
fee in total.
two things here, approving.
Correct.
Or
And I will comment one more thing, if I may. It still only requires a simple majority at the council level, because you're still just redirecting one expense category to another expense category in the same department.
Okay, all right. Well, then I'll place the motion before us to a vote, and that is amending the 2022 general fund budget under Resolution R-205-22. Those in favor signify by saying
Or
aye.
to add the 10,000, right? The amendment.
Oh, you want me to do the amendment first? I got the impression the amendment would come second.
Nope, so first we would need to amend the resolution, if Finance Committee so wishes, to go
Okay.
from the 15,000 to the 25,000.
Okay. So the motion before us then is to amend the resolution to amend by adding the additional $10,000 from $15,000 to a total of $25,000. Sound correct?
Yep, and I'd just like to clarify for the public, it's
Yes.
as shown on the screen.
As shown on the screen, correct. Okay. Those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. So now we're voting on the entire.
As amended.
Yes.
Yep. Exactly.
All right. Those in favor of approving Resolution R-20522 as amended, the 2022 general fund budget, those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Very good. All right. Now moving on to item 6B. Did you want to speak to this before we move into discussion from the committee and from voting?
Yes, please.
Okay, go ahead.
So staff would like to recommend that this resolution be postponed. The intention was the ordinance that was referred out last time, as well as this resolution, would go on a parallel track, but the ordinance doesn't actually come back until the next meeting. So the ordinance would actually create this new process, and then this resolution on Finance Committee would be to set the fee. And you can't really set a fee until the process is approved. So staff would recommend that we postpone this to January 10th, which is our next Finance Committee meeting, and then we would suggest doing the same thing at the council meeting.
All right. And that's my fault that we brought that around to a postponement.
Well, I'm glad we did though, right? It's better we learned about it now that we're doing it wrong.
Right, no, very good. So do I have a postponement, may I have a postponement of Resolution R-210-22, updating the 2022 and 2023 fee schedule to include initial application and annual fees for small wireless facilities, postponed until the January 10th, 2023 Finance Committee meeting?
I move postponement.
All right, we have a motion. Yes, we'll, discussion, go ahead.
So just a question for, it would be useful for the discussion in January. When I was looking through the resolution, it looked like the fees hadn't changed according to the documentation. It'd be interesting to know what the difference was at some point in the discussion next time.
Yeah, we could talk about that next time for sure.
Great, thanks.
All right, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor of postponement to the January 10th meeting signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. All right, moving on to item 6C. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-215-22, creation of a combined Badger and Terravessa lift station rate?
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. Misty, you'll speak to this item as well?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
So the city of Fitchburg is primarily supported by gravity sewer. However, in the past handful of years, there was a new lift station created in the Terravessa development. At the time that that lift station was created, council made the policy decision to set up a separate additional rate simply for the customers that benefit from that lift station. So that it's those customers that are paying for the operating costs of that lift station and not all of the customers across the city. When we absorbed the portion of the town of Madison, we also got that Badger lift station. You may recall you approved a contract with the city of Madison that authorized our share of those costs for that lift station. So that has already been approved. We know the city, or the utility in particular, has to pay those costs onto the city of Madison for our share. The policy discussion in front of you now, though, is whether, I guess there's three pieces. One is, do we want to have an additional special code for those customers in order to pay for those additional costs for the Badger lift station or not? Staff would recommend yes, consistent with what we're doing for Terravessa lift station. The second policy decision is staff is recommending one combined rate for both lift stations. It's easier from a billing perspective, and there's a fair amount of assumptions built in those rates at this point. So we will continue to track them individually, and they will go into their own buckets. But for this first part of the rate, we'd like to have one consistent rate while we're trying to figure things out, rather than having two separate rates. And then the third policy decision is around capital. So when the Terravessa lift station rate came through, at least from staff's perspective, our intention was that it would include the capital costs as well, but it wasn't specifically delineated or included in the rate. And now you know we're going through the CIP process. We're doing replacement funds and things like that more so. We'd like to do that same strategy for these, where we will include an annualized cost of capital for future replacements and future significant repairs in the rate up front. So we could accumulate that funding up until we need it, and then we'd have the cash available when those large projects came through. We believe that will keep the rates less fluctuating, because you'll have some consistency there. It also should save money over the long run, because you're accumulating those funds and earning interest on it rather than borrowing money and paying interest on it if you wait until the time comes later. So staff would recommend including just this one rate for both people using the same kind of methodology, but then including a capital component for each one as well.
Very good. I'll open up the resolution before us for discussion. Questions? Alder Gerhardt.
I guess one question. Do we know, I guess it wasn't clear to me what the previous rate was. Is it a significant increase for either of the areas?
So the town area does not currently have a special rate. And the city of Madison doesn't have a special rate for it either, because they have a lot of lift stations. Where here in Fitchburg, this is a unique thing, so wanted to target it for that particular piece. The Terravessa lift station amount does have a current rate, and I don't have it. I will get that to you.
Yeah, it's not urgent right now because I agree with the rationale and everything you've said. I guess that kind of leads into my other question was, I wanted to clarify, because lift stations are so rare, my understanding is that's because most of the city is gravity well. That's the nature of the geography. But in terms of the fee, is it only charged to the properties that are using the lift station?
Exactly.
Okay, great, thanks.
To the actual just users. Yeah. Additional discussion, questions? All right, hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. All right, moving on to item 6D. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-216-22, amending the 2022 Debt and Capital Projects Fund budgets, payment on deferred special assessment, and unspent 2020A proceeds to reduce debt issuance?
I move approval.
We have approval. And Misty, I know you're going to speak to this one.
Yep, this one is all me.
Yeah.
So even though we didn't borrow money in 2022 because the projects were delayed and just from capacity standpoint, I still went through one of the normal exercises I do each time we're getting ready to borrow, where we look to see how much money it is that we need to borrow and if there's other funding sources we can use to reduce that amount. So there are two that I'm bringing forward for your consideration. One is in 2022, we received a large payment on a deferred special assessment that we weren't planning. It's about $800,000. That money, the project that money ultimately was for has already been paid off, so it's money that's available. And I'd like to redirect that to other capital projects to reduce the amount of borrowing we have to issue, which will ultimately save us money on interest cost and issuance costs. So that's the first piece of it. The second piece of it is we have about $50,000 of unspent money from 2020 that I borrowed, that the project is complete, so I don't expect to spend it. Under the IRS rules, you have to spend the money you borrow for obvious reasons, so I'd like to redirect that money to a different project that would still qualify under the 2020 borrowing requirements. So it's those two amounts added together. I will then reduce the amount that we have to borrow in 2023 by those amounts, because we're using those for those projects instead.
Question I have, we'll open it up to for questions in committee, but if the dollars are not spent, first of all, is there a period of time that you have to spend the dollars that are borrowed? And then secondly, what happens if you do not?
So there is a period of time. So we have spend down requirements as well as arbitrage requirements. So in general, you need to spend it. You have to hit certain benchmarks, but you have to spend it all within 3 years. If you don't, you have to pay it back.
Okay.
So rather than paying that money back and then borrowing again for something different, it makes more sense, at least in my view, to redirect this money to a different purpose.
I'd agree. Additional questions? Alder Gerhart, go ahead.
So I guess in terms of, is there a reason that we didn't expect the payment? I'm just curious as to why that happened.
So it was a deferred special assessment, so for agricultural land. So it's not triggered until development happens or a sale happens or something like that. This particular payment wasn't triggered yet, so they could have continued to defer it, but the property owner chose to pay it off early, I believe to get it off the books, and then they don't have to accrue interest any longer.
Oh, wow.
So they made that choice.
Okay, and then I'm curious just because I know we've deferred a decent number of special assessment payments during the COVID pandemic period. So is this just an unusual case, or is this something that we could potentially see? It's just happened because of the way assessments work?
So there's not a lot of deferred special assessments anymore. I'd say this is one of the largest ones that we still have out there. We did have a similar situation for another one either last year or the year before, and we did a very similar process. But it's hard. I don't want to budget for something that I don't know is going to happen. So sometimes these do happen, and then we just want to make sure we're on top of it and have a plan.
Great. And then I guess so the salt shed repairs, I know that was an unexpected cost that came up a couple years back. $500,000 is almost covering the entire salt shed repair. Am I correct?
So I pulled these amounts based on what we were supposed to borrow for in 2022. And yes, that's the full amount that I was going to borrow in 22 for that project. So rather than borrowing anything for it, we'll now pay for it essentially with cash through this available money.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Very good. Additional questions, discussion? All right. Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Moving on to item 6E. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-219-22, approving corrosion investigation and rehabilitation services for wells number 4 and 10?
I move approval.
All right, we have an approval. And Misty, are you speaking to this item then as well?
I will. So well 4 and 10 both have a microbe in there that likes to eat iron. So we have an issue that we need to address. We'd like to hire this company to do an assessment to see what our options are to try to address the issue and then help us fix it so that it doesn't become a bigger problem. I believe this is the one, sorry, I should have looked. So this is a sole source recommendation. They have a lot of experience with our particular wells, and we believe they will give us the best information as we're trying to deal with the problem.
Okay. And you may not be the person to ask, but I mean, is this kind of unique, or maybe I should ask somebody from Public Works or Chad?
I have that information. I was going to relay that. This is
okay.
not unique to us. We are using an aquifer that many other municipalities, not just in this area, but throughout this entire region, utilize. And again, it's not unique to our particular wells. It is something that, municipalities are now having to pay more attention to than they may have in the past. And it is something that can certainly accelerate the wear on the materials within these wells and lead to premature replacement.
Okay, very good, thank you. Alder Wheeler, did you have an addition? Oh, all right, we're all on the same question here. Yep. Go ahead, Alder Gerhard.
Just one comment, and also for public understanding. My understanding, basic reading of the contract would said that it was going to test the water against the like a sample of the aquifer water pre it being in the, which I appreciate because we're checking the water quality with a standard. And I think that's the question that's going to come up is about the drinking water quality, and not just with what's in there now, but as in comparison to what it is naturally. So I appreciated that element of it. It seems like a really comprehensive review, and look forward to finding a resolution.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, additional questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to 6F. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-225-22, authorizing legal services in the defense of Artisan Village LLC excessive tax assessment lawsuit? This is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. And Misty, are you speaking to this item?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
So Artisan Village LLC has filed a lawsuit against the city based on their assessed value. The city has worked with Attorney Seibel on a variety of other similar type cases for our assessment claims and is recommending that we contract with her for this claim as well.
Okay, very good. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to item 6G. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-228-22 to approve a contract with Dane County to accept 2023 Neighborhood Navigator funding? And this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, we have a motion for approval. And speaking to this as well, Misty.
I am. And I'll note we do have quite a few direct referrals on the meeting this time. A big part of that is because our next meeting is canceled and people are trying to get things done before the end of the year or get things at least moving along before January hits. So this one in particular is a contract with Dane County. They have provided us a grant for the Neighborhood Navigators. I believe this is our third or fourth year of this grant. The grant pays for the full cost of the 2 LTE employees that we can hire, along with all of their materials and supplies.
Very good. Thank you. Discussion? Yes, Alder Wheeler.
Were we able to fill both positions last year?
For a period of time, but I believe one turned over, and I don't think it has been refilled.
And we had to give that money?
We had to give that money back. Yep.
All right. No additional discussion. Place the motion before us to a vote. To those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to 6H, do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-235-22, approving a contract for an organizational review and staffing study for the City of Fitchburg, direct referral? All right, we have a motion for approval, and Misty, you're up again.
We actually turn this one over to Chad.
All right, Chad.
Thank you, Misty. So as you will all recall, this was a conversation for the council during our ARPA TID investment plan earlier this year that ultimately was approved by council to move forward with this, and an RFP was sent out by Human Resources last month in November. We received one proposal back in response to that RFP. Their proposal meets the requirements of the RFP, and staff is recommending approval or requesting approval of this proposal and to enter into a contract. And just to comment further on why this is a direct referral, based on timing of the following next month's council meeting and personnel committee meeting, it would have led to a situation where a potential approval would not have been obtained until January 24th. And in conversation with both Human Resources and then ultimately reaching out to Gabriella as chair of the Personnel Committee to sense where that committee might be at with this particular project, this was a good opportunity to allow Baker Tilly an additional 6 weeks to spend time on this project versus basically not being able to start until actually the end of January. We do have a report back date requested of July 1st of next year. So the additional 6 weeks for them to begin this project, I think, will be very beneficial in allowing them to meet that particular timeline. And then this item will go back to the Personnel Committee in January for discussion and feedback, and I suspect it'll actually be a recurring agenda item on personnel while it's happening, just so that the Personnel Committee can get updates on where this particular study is at.
Very good. Thank you, Chad.
Can I actually add something too quick?
Yes, go ahead.
So this is funded through the TID 6 closure money. One thing I'd like to point out, and we don't need an amendment on the resolution, but the account number on the pre-approval is wrong. So staff will fix that. I think I'm probably the only one that cares, but just for transparency purposes.
All right, very good. Questions, discussion from the committee? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on, 6I. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-236-22, approving the holiday premium MOU for police and fire? And this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
All right, we have an approval from the committee.
I
Discussion.
can speak to this one.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, Chad.
So we are presenting these MOUs for council consideration, and again, the reason for direct referral is obviously their upcoming holidays and a desire to have this updated MOUs in place for those. But ultimately, we learned recently about inconsistency in the way in which the city had been applying holiday premium between our police and fire represented personnel, and we entered into an MOU that clarifies the process that will be used and provides consistency among both unions for the compensation for working on a holiday. We really wanted to take the approach to recognize our public safety employees who are working the holiday and ensure that their holiday work was also incentivized through this premium as well.
Very good. Discussion or questions from the committee? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to item 6J. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-241-22, purchase of traffic signal equipment for the Cyene Road reconstruction project, and this too is a direct referral. All right. We have an approval from the committee. And who will speak to this? Chad?
I can.
Oh, Misty.
Just based off the referral sheet.
Yeah, all right.
So this is a purchase of traffic signal equipment for Cyene Road. There are two intersections that are getting the equipment, the Lacey Road and South Cyene. Road intersection, as well as the East Sherrill Drive and the South Scion Road intersection. Generally, City of Madison would order this equipment, but because they're having staff vacancies, we agreed that we would purchase it in order to keep the project moving along.
Okay, very good. Questions, discussion? Hearing none, I'll place the motion before us to a vote. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. Moving on to our last item, action item, which is 6K. Do I have a motion to approve Resolution R-242-22, approving Realty Income Corporation Settlement Agreement? And this is a direct referral.
I move approval.
Okay, we have a motion for approval. And who will speak to this?
I'll take this one.
Go ahead, Misty.
First, I'll say there isn't a closed session on the Finance Committee meeting, but there is a closed session on the council meeting. We felt it would be better for the entire council to have that closed session discussion together. So if you do have questions, we could always defer this to the council meeting without a recommendation from Finance, and then you could have that more thorough discussion at the council level. But from a finance perspective, what this is when we were putting in McKee Road, we did eminent domain for a portion of property along the Realty Income property, which is the AMC Theater. We paid them $69,000 for the land based on the process there. If you approve this resolution, we've come to a settlement agreement with them that we would pay them an additional $35,500. The project is fully TID 6 funded as part of the McKee Road reconstruction, so the funding is available.
All right. Thank you. And I'll ask this lightly. There are questions? All right. I'll place the motion before, we'll not defer then. So we'll go ahead with the motion before us. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. That concludes the action items. Moving on to item 7, announcements. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for January 10th, 2023. And then our last item, number 8, adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move adjournment.
All right, I have a motion to adjourn. Those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. The ayes have it, motion carries. We are adjourned at 6:09 p.m. Thank you.